Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, extreme pressure on athletes isn't new, is it? But do you think that it's becoming more intense, or do you think we're hearing more about it for the simple reason that people feel more willing and perhaps more able to discuss mental health issues?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a combination of both. In recent years, we have seen a lot of coverage in the media, in the social media, and mainstream media around athletes coming out and having the courage just to speak more about their mental health issues. And I do believe over the past 12 months that has been exacerbated by, of course, the pandemic. One thing that we often overlook is that these athletes are human beings first, and they have dealt with the negative impacts of the pandemic just like us. So I definitely feel as though that the negative consequences are coming out in their performances during the Olympics, as we have seen with Simone and other athletes who are coming out in support, and completely understandable and rightly so.
Yeah, on the one hand, social media is making it easier for athletes and sports people to communicate, and they don't go through the filter of perhaps an agency or a PR team that they might have done in the past. But do you think, on the other hand, social media is making matters worse because those personal messages, hurtful messages that anyone in the public eye is subject to, there isn't that filter coming back the other way, is there? Do you think that's making matters much harder?
Yes, certainly. As you mentioned there, that is the positive in which athletes do have a say, and they have the direct communication with essentially their fans. But also, on the other hand, there is this unfiltered room for internet trolls to really make hurtful comments. And often, this is something that is not well monitored enough on social media. So unfortunately, that does get through to the athletes on a regular basis. And as much as they try to block it out, it's something that is constantly there. And especially for someone like Simone, who has the weight of the world on her shoulders, I do believe it's a lot for a 24-year-old to be able to deal with and cope.
Yeah, it's a lot for anyone to deal with. And then I was thinking about her particular case because, for example, in a football team, you've got all your teammates who are sort of there with you and who can perhaps absorb some of the blows if they come from, comments or unwelcome feedback or unsolicited feedback. But she doesn't have that. I'm just wondering if certain types of people, perhaps people in individual sports or less team-oriented sports, or certain profiles of individual are perhaps more vulnerable than others.
Yeah, there is definitely a case for that. In the case of Simone, and looking back at the last 12 months, these athletes have experienced, incredible levels of isolation, of alienation because, of course, of the restrictions. But also, there's not many people who can really relate to what they're going through. We're talking about people who are within less than 1% of the population. So most people will never feel the pressure that she is feeling at the moment. So I do feel, it can happen to anyone, athletes in team sports and also, single sports as well. However, in her case, I think because she even mentioned it before the Olympics, she was feeling that she was, again, essentially the face of the gymnastics for the Team US, coupled with everything that is going on around the competition, the changes in the plans, the isolation. I believe this is just something that is a volcano that is erupting. And, the positive is that it is really creating traction, and we are speaking about this topic. So hopefully it will help battle some of the stigma that we are seeing on social media by, the minority of the population, which is good to see the majority supporting her. And that's why I think it's going to be such a powerful movement going forward.
Sure. Sometimes it's not the majority of messages. It's that one message that really gets to you, doesn't it? Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Really appreciate it. Tulio Barbosa, sport and performance psychology consultant at Mental Performance in London. Thank you so much.